small project. I went to Harbor Freight and I found a blade sharpening tool. Purchased it, and actually right now I have actually dismantled this device. You can see over here that I've got it dismantled, taken apart into many pieces. But you can see that here is the device, came in the original box. What I'm working on here is on the internet, of course. There are several videos out there already showing how to make improvements to this. So I'm taking this thing apart and starting to implement some of those actual changes. One of them here was placing an additional washer here behind this so that you don't cut into the cast aluminum as you're making adjustments. And I did that on both sides already. It's just a quick little fix. The guy noticed that it was cutting into the aluminum, cast aluminum, so we put a washer there to take care of that. Right now I'm working on the concept here of how to actually mount this thing. Of course you could mount it to a standard piece of plywood. You could really put a piece of plywood, piece of shelving board, anything. But I happen to have some old leftover timbers here. I'm going to replace the wall here in the basement. Nice little piece. It's about 14 inches wide. One end needs to be squared up, so that's what I'm going to accomplish here first this morning. I'm just going to work on squaring this piece up and then decide exactly where to mount the device. So let's go ahead and get started with that little project. Recently purchased a jet. Okay, in my previous video I took and prepped a piece of wood that I'd like to use for mounting this thing. I ended up with 14 3/4 by 13 3/4, and that was truly just based on the size of the stock that I had. No other reason for the sizing. But we're going to go ahead and use that for my base. Before we get to the base now, I need to go back and to reinstall or reassemble the sharpening device. I'd kind of had it apart, making some of the adjustments that I had based on what I'd seen on the internet from other people. Like I said, we put the washer on both sides of this to keep from cutting into the cast aluminum should we decide to change the angle over time, which I'm sure we will. So 2 washers there added to that. On the bottom here, the guy did note that this piece turns or twists. I did note that. I did get in here and tighten this up like he suggested, and now you can see that the movement's pretty good. It does move nicely. It's not twisting with the proper tension. I think this would be just about perfect now. There probably is some changes you could make there, but for now I'm not going to make those changes or add an additional piece. I'm going to go with this for now. So at this time we need to go ahead and reassemble this. At the base over here, this is the base, and of course let's get the orientation right before we put this thing together upside down. So that's where it's going to go back together. That'll get us where we need to be. So I'll just flip this over and also flip this up, and that's going to be where this needs to go back. It's rather simple to put this thing back together. That set right there like that. Come over and grab the 2 pieces that go into this. They're nicely rounded on one side, so that would be the side that would go down. We'll go ahead and set those 2 back in place. Make sure I get this in the right place, and then we can go ahead and start to remount the set screws here. From the other side, you can see this goes back together fairly easy. I think one of these actually, from the 2 on the back, go ahead and put those in. Because one of the front ones is going to include that post. So I need to flip that back over to the side. Which one have a post on it? But here we are with our simple reassembly here. Of course, just putting the Allen screws back in. Get those all started nicely. And now we can flip this back over to take a look at it to make sure we're getting things back in the right place. And sure enough, I put one of those in the wrong place. So I'm going to go ahead and just simply take it out and move it to the other side here. This way we will have everything started. We'll get all of these started up. I think for now I've decided to just this thing can slide one way or the other. I haven't really got to the point of using it yet. So we're going to go ahead and drop this down. And I'm just going to center it for now. Okay, got those 4 started. If you don't have a nice Allen wrench, I'd suggest you get one. It makes this job a whole lot easier for tightening these things up. Alright, let's put that to get tight there. Never get to all of them as you would need to, so then we'll just go back and tighten this up from here using the wrench provided. And I believe actually for this one, I can kind of see here that this is in the wrong location, so do pay attention when you take one of these apart. Just as you're putting it back together, you'll probably have to have a better memory than I do at sometimes. Or take yourself a picture, or go back and look at the box. This one appears that, of course, it wanted to be setting like this. And of course, you want to do any of this dismantling before you actually mount it to your piece of wood. Get all this back where it should be, and back in the proper location. Up. You can see that those 4 are all started properly now. And let's go ahead and start to tighten some of this down. Like I said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and mount this thing more or less in the center for now. And once I do my sharpening, that'll kind of let me know whether I need to move this or not. We'll go ahead and torque these down a little bit, so that we have something to start working with. Put them back here. And with those 4 mounting Allens, you can get this thing mounted back nicely. Okay, we're mounted back. Things are working. It's moving. There's very little play now, thanks to that adjustment being made. Things are looking good. So with that being said, I'd now like to move on to actually deciding to mount this to the piece of wood. I've got the piece of wood here that I've already prepped. I'm going to mount it on the back corner here. All the adjustments, I foresee that the blade's going to be over here somewhere. I may have to add some additional supports here. This arm that swings out over here. I've also kind of thought that maybe it could use a little support as you swing it out. Maybe it's going to need something. So these 2 areas here are going to give me a little bit of space to work with should I need to add some additional support. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this to the back of this. I can also see for long-term storage of this, since my shop isn't big enough to have things set up all the time. For long-term storage, I could loosen this motor, slide it all the way over, and then it will clear the outside of this, so it'll be nice and safe to store. Okay, now that I've got... Okay, for this portion here, I've decided to mount this thing. One nice thing about using the 1.5 inch of plywood here is the fact that I can use a nice screw to give me a nice lockdown. Put a little washer here on it. It just to kind of give it a little extra support. And of course, go ahead and put this in place. Okay, we're back. I've put in the 4 screws to get this thing mounted to the base now, so it's nicely mounted to the plywood. I think that'll work out very well over time. One thing I was really hoping for, which it did work out, as you can see here, that for storage purposes, you could slide this all the way to the side, and it does clear this end, so I can take and put it safely in a cabinet, lean it up, stand it up. I think it would do really well. Stored away. That should be very nice for storage. And as we continue to work through this demo, of course everybody has one of these blades. You've probably used it way too much. You've used it 3, 4, 5 years past its normal usage, and you can see this one has been through hell and back. So this one I think will be a very good test for this. I need to do some serious cleanup work on this blade. But at the same time we'll get this blade sharpened up for use as well. So you can see that this blade is in pretty bad shape. I don't believe I should be cutting anything with this blade currently. I likely will install it just to show what kind of poor cut it's getting right now. But then we'll do a cleanup on this blade, sharpen it, and then show you what really this sharpener can do for you. Okay, for testing out that saw blade, I found a piece of hard pine here. I think this will give us a good look at whether this blade can cut or not. I'm going to cut a few rips off of this, take a look at the cut, see if we have any burning. I'm expecting we will have some burning with the looks of that blade. So let's go ahead and get started here. Turn on my vacuum system. Actually, remarkably, this one did cut through there. I do see a little bit of burning though, so I think that blade, of course, still needs to be trimmed up and used. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and sharpen that blade. Okay, before I go to sharpen that blade, I have decided to go ahead and give this guy a little bit of a cleanup beforehand. And of course, out there on the web, many people say one of the best things to use WD-40, a good old wire brush or slightly used wire brush. Give it a good cleanup as much as you can to get as much of this gunk off of here, so that when you go to sharpen it, you end up things cleaned up, and then you sharpen it, and you just have a much nicer looking blade ready to be used again. So let me go ahead and spend a little time on this. Go ahead and put a little WD-40 on this guy. Up a little bit. That definitely does clean up, knock off some of the stuff. Try not to, of course, do too much damage to the teeth of the blade while you're doing this. But of course, work through here. You can really make this blade look nicer. So I'll go ahead and spend a little time cleaning this blade up, and okay, I'm back. It took a little bit longer than I expected, but with the WD-40 and a good wire brush, I've cleaned up the majority of the pitch that was on this blade. Much nicer to work with now. I think even the ratcheting mechanism, we'll get down into the goalie a little bit better. The goalies were pretty gunked up as well, so I don't think I would have been getting a good seat there for that. And actually, here's even one that still had a little bit too much left in it. Every little bit counts in this case, so I think with a nice clean blade now, this will be a lot better to get us where we need to be. So we'll go ahead and get this remounted. From a previous session, I'd already had this set up, so this should go right back into place. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it down into place. Once again, your centering cone goes on the blade. You know, just kind of shake it around just a little bit. You get your spring and your washer, and I am going with the nut to tighten this up. So you just simply, what I choose to do here is take the thing, start to tighten it, just turn it. You can hear the ratcheting going on. I'm going to continue to tighten here until I get a nice resistance. I don't want a lot of resistance for moving the blade, but I think the better tightened it is, the better overall cut you'll get on the blade or sharpening. So that feels pretty good now. Go back and check my setup here. We'll go ahead and put this on to lock this down into place. Hold the bottom nut, tighten this up, and now we should have a good secure fit. Let's just double check the setup. Everything is nice and tight. I'll come back in. Looks like it could be just a little bit off now. Alright, I believe it's touching there. Come back. This should give me my first run at this, first pass to see if it's cleaning these teeth up. So let me go ahead and give this a shot, see if we're getting those teeth cleaned up. And of course we want to know where we started at with this. So I'll take a pencil here and I'll mark that this is the first one we're working with. And then as we make it all the way around, just be sure not to do the teeth more than once. So let's go ahead and start this up. I've got my safety glasses on here. I'm going to turn this on and we'll come into the first one, and you can hear that it is cutting a little bit, and then we'll go back and check, and it appears maybe I don't have the best setup there. I think I need to make a little bit of an adjustment, so let me work on this just a little bit more. I'll come back. I think what's going to have to happen is I just need just a little bit more back. It seems that I'm not catching the tooth as I would like to. Okay, I went ahead and sharpened the blade. I got pretty good results. It's my first time doing one of these blades. I wouldn't say it's the best that could happen, so I think after you do this probably several times you'll get better at it. There is just slight movement in it. Some definitely took off a little more than others. Some look like maybe I didn't get a good touch on all of them, so I think there's a little bit of variation here. But I think overall, you are getting your saw blade cleaned up. Some of these I probably need to go back and hit them again. I think I'm going to go ahead though for grins on this one. Go ahead and put this back in the table saw and just see what kind of a cut we get out of this blade now that have brought some life back into it, hopefully, just by the fact of cleaning this blade up. Okay, I'm back. That actually worked pretty good. I've reinstalled the blade. I had that same piece of wood as I used before. I went through and made a cut on it. This time I can tell there is a smoother cut. It's not perfect. This blade is a 24 tooth blade, so I'm not going to get really smooth. But looking at the piece I had cut off before, I can see a lot of saw cuts or saw mark blades in the first piece, in the first side. Yeah, whereas the second side is much smoother. It is a nicer cut, so I did get some additional life out of that blade. I should be able to use it again for some of my rougher cuts that I want to do. So I'm very happy with it. For the first time, my very first blade, working through this, I think it is a tool that probably takes a little time to master the tool here, to set this up each and every time, to go through your variety of blades. It'll be one thing to do a 24 tooth blade, but to switch over and do a 60 tooth blade will be a whole nother story. Probably just a little more tweaking and setup, but I think once you do this, like I said earlier, several times, I think you'll begin to get the benefit out of this tool. Thank you very much for watching.